Hello, you're watching TVP World News. I'm Jonasz Rewiski. Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski praised the greater clarity which emerged recently on the controversial subject of Russian drones and jets that continue to violate NATO airspace. Speaking on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly, he said the recent announcements from NATO leadership confirm the existing procedures which allow the use of force if necessary.
One benefit of the last few days has been the clarification of this issue, also from the NATO Secretary General. It's nothing new. Mistakes happen, such as when an aircraft or ship violates another country's airspace. Maybe there's an error or a message. There are hotlines. Listen, a pilot or captain made a mistake. Well, everyone understands that. We've had such incidents with Russia too. If they admit their mistake, they apologize, we don't make a fuss about it. However, when it's deliberate, like the 21 drones fired at Poland, that's a different matter. Then the Air Force has its own procedures. Please ask the Polish Army for more details. But you know, there's interception, which means establishing visual contact. Sometimes they force a landing. Sometimes they fire warning shots. However, when the military deems that there is a real threat to the lives and property of Poles, it has a constitutional obligation to protect the inviolability of Polish borders. Imagine what would happen if Cuban MiGs flew over Florida or Mar-a-Lago. What would happen then? You have your answer.
US President Donald Trump said Ukraine has a shot at regaining territory, criticizing Russia's war effort as wasteful, brutal and damaging to Moscow's reputation. Trump also argued that if it were America's war, it would have been over in 1 week.
Yeah, they have a shot at it because Russia.
What prompted you to change your thoughts on
Well,
that?
because I've been watching the way what Russia's been doing. I'm very dissatisfied with what Russia's doing and what President Putin is doing. I haven't liked it at all. He's killing people for no reason whatsoever, and they are doing very poorly considering they have put it all out on the line. Their economy is going to hell. They're bombing the hell out of everything, and they're picking up a very little territory, if any. In fact, they're losing some territory. So. I think it's been very bad for the reputation of Russia. This war should have been over. If this were our war, we would have had it over in 1 week.
Speaking at the UN General Assembly, European Council President Antonio Costa condemned Russia's continued assault on Ukraine as a blatant violation of the UN Charter and a threat to every nation's sovereignty. He pledged that Europe would keep up the pressure on Moscow while pushing for an immediate ceasefire and a just, lasting peace.
In Ukraine, a sovereign nation was brutally attacked by a permanent member of the Security Council in clear violation of the United Nations Charter, a clear violation of sovereignty, territorial integrity, the respect of internationally recognized borders, and the right to choose its own destiny. This aggression threatens not only Ukraine, it threatens every nation in this assembly. If we accept Russia's invasion of Ukraine, no country will ever be safe. We will continue to apply pressure on Russia to end this war. We call for meaningful negotiations and an immediate ceasefire and a just and lasting peace.
140 billion euros could be headed to Ukraine after Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz joined the growing chorus of voices calling for Russia's frozen assets to be used to finance Kyiv's war effort. These calls come as the EU's finances are growing increasingly strained from the ongoing support for Ukraine.
After months of hesitation, the leader of Europe's largest economy is signalling a change of course. And this is Chancellor Merz's plan. It envisions giving Ukraine a €140 billion interest-free loan to buy military equipment, which the EU would also be involved in. It would be guaranteed by EU member states, financed from the EU's long-term budget starting in 2028, and repaid once Russia pays war reparations. Most of Russia's €250 billion in central bank reserves, frozen after the full-scale invasion began, are held by the Brussels-based securities repository Euroclear. So far, only the interest on these funds has been used to help service a Ukraine loan, but those revenues are now dwindling and Ukraine is desperate for cash.
Germany has been and remains cautious on the issue of confiscating the Russian central bank's assets that are frozen in Europe. But this must not hold us back. We must consider how, by circumventing these problems, we can make these funds available for the defense of Ukraine.
Some EU states also warned that tapping Russia's frozen assets could undermine confidence in Europe's financial system. But after more than 3 years of war and billions in EU aid, that thinking is starting to shift.
When Ukraine has such a need for financial support is not wise and is also putting a strain on the European member countries of the European Union, because they have, if this money is not mobilized in one way or another, they have to provide the support for Ukraine from their own budgets, and that is unpopular, or it is becoming increasingly unpopular in many countries.
Merz says the plan would require a majority of EU members to approve it, a step meant to keep Russia's closest EU ally Hungary from blocking the move.
Volkswagen is shutting down production lines at 2 of its German factories that specialize in electric vehicles, according to media reports. The decision comes on the back of lower than expected demand for the company's EVs and amidst ongoing layoffs. The affected sites are the carmaker's factory in Zwickau, near Czech border, which produces Audi's Q4 electric SUV, and Emden, near the Netherlands, which makes the brand's own EVs called ID.4 and ID.7. In August, Volkswagen was the best-selling EV maker in Europe, with sales 45% higher than the year prior. However, the demand is not matching production capabilities, hence the need for pauses. Volkswagen is in the midst of slashing this excess capacity, and the company plans to let go 35,000 people by the end of the decade. However, layoffs will not affect the Zwickau and Emden sites. In Moldova, oligarch Vlad Plahotniuc has been extradited just days before the country's parliamentary elections. Once Moldova's most powerful figure, he now faces charges tied to the so-called theft of the century. The 59-year-old former MP was arrested in Athens in July while boarding a flight to Dubai, after Interpol flagged him for holding 16 passports. He is accused of being involved in the 2013 billion-dollar fraud that drained 12% of Moldova's GDP. Plahotniuc denies the allegations, but he remains under US and UK sanctions for corruption and attempts to sway elections. Moldovan authorities say he played a role in recent Russian efforts to destabilize the country. His return comes as the pro-European ruling PAS party faces a tough election battle against pro-Russian rivals. Hungary and Slovakia's refusal to cut ties with Russian oil suppliers is due to lack of political will, says energy analyst Daniel Czyżewski. The expert explained reducing gas dependency on Russia can be done using the Czech Republic as an example.
In April this year, the Prime Minister of Czech Republic announced that Czech Republic is no longer dependent on Russia. It's no longer dependent on Russian oil. It can buy more from other directions. Czech Republic 3 years ago was in the same situation like Hungary and Slovakia. If there was any political will in Budapest and Bratislava then, and investment came after that, both countries would be independent as well from Russian oil. But there was no political will the ties between Russia and those countries really tightened from then than loosened in any way. So I think it's a matter of political will.
2 unidentified drones were spotted overnight above Karlskrona in southern Sweden, home to the country's main naval base. Police have launched an investigation into a suspected violation of aviation law. Local police confirmed the drones were large models, similar to those seen in recent days over Denmark. Witnesses described the aircraft flashing red and green lights. The incident is under investigation for illegal drone activity. Karlskrona, located on islands in the Baltic Sea, hosts Sweden's main naval base, as well as defense industry firms specializing in submarines and maritime technologies. In recent days, large drones of unknown origin have also been reported over several Danish airports and a military base, temporarily disrupting air traffic. Earlier this week, flights were halted in Copenhagen and Oslo, where Norwegian police arrested a foreign national accused of operating a drone near the capital's international airport. According to Olena Lennon, adjunct professor of national security, the recent airspace violations and drone incursions into NATO are not isolated incidents, but rather deliberate Russian provocations. The professor also called for a coordinated, all-hands-on-deck approach to respond to the incidents.
There seems to be a pattern of deliberate attacks to test NATO's capabilities, response time, and resolve. Even though we don't know all the information, and these attacks seem to be ongoing. It was the most recent ones in Denmark. But it appears that there is a pattern of a coordinated hybrid operation that includes not just airspace violations, but also attacks on critical infrastructure, cyber attacks, disinformation campaigns, sabotage, and so on. So it seems that now is the time to come up with a proportional response from NATO allies, and also act in a coordinated fashion, with all hands on deck approach, because even though investigations are still pending, I think one thing is clear: these are not isolated incidents, and these are deliberate provocations on Russia's part.
Turkey and the United States have signed a memorandum on civil nuclear cooperation during President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's visit to the White House. The talks also touched on Russian oil, US sanctions, and the possible return of F-35 fighter jet sales to Ankara. The agreement was signed on Thursday by Turkish Energy Minister Alparslan Bayraktar, who called it a new initiative to deepen nuclear energy cooperation between Ankara and Washington. US President Donald Trump confirmed that Turkey may halt purchases of Russian oil following his Oval Office talks with Erdogan. The discussions also opened the door to lifting US sanctions and resuming F-35 jet sales, suspended under the Biden administration. Erdogan's first White House visit in 6 years began in a friendly atmosphere, with Trump praising his Turkish counterpart as a very tough man. The renewed alignment underscores Ankara's hopes of leveraging Trump's deal-making approach for both economic and strategic gains, particularly within NATO. Spain has sent a naval ship to join Italy in monitoring a civilian flotilla heading for Gaza, where activists are attempting to challenge Israel's naval blockade. In the early hours of Friday, Spain's Navy vessel Furor departed Cartagena harbour. It will assist Italy in following the global Sumund flotilla, a civilian-led initiative using around 50 small boats to deliver aid to Gaza. Volunteers of the flotilla include lawyers, members of parliament and activists, among them Swedish campaigner Greta Thunberg. Italy already dispatched a frigate on Wednesday, shortly after the flotilla reported being attacked by drones that dropped stun grenades and itching powder off the Greek island of Gavdos. The incident caused minor damage but no injuries. Similar activist flotillas in the past were intercepted by Israeli forces. sometimes with the use of force. This latest mission is expected to once again test the limits of Israel's blockade. And with this, we conclude this news bulletin. Please stay with us here on TVP World for more latest news and updates.